Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, June the 1st. And welcome to our commentary. Welcome to the month of June. We're not quite in the second half of 2023, but we're getting there as we enter the month of June. June is also, of course, the month in about 20 days when we officially go into summer. Although around here, that doesn't wait until the 20th of June. You can start feeling summer around here around Memorial Day or this last weekend. Well, we got a couple of things we're going to be talking about today. I want to direct you, though, to a podcast that I recorded earlier today. It's available on my blog as well as over on my Twitter page. And you can hear the podcast, and it's with Frank Burke, who's a businessman. And by the way, one of the things that I learned today during the podcast is that Frank has had some experience in the beer industry. So he was able to share with us some very interesting information about what happens in that beer business. Of course, one of the beer companies is the one under fire right now for having gone woke on its customers. Target is also under fire for the same things. And we talked a little bit about what drives a company to do something like this. What exactly does a company, what drives a company to do something of this nature, to go woke and to, in essence, walk away from its customer base? Certainly in the case of the beer company, that's the case. And in the case of Target, a company that basically caters to the family, meaning mother, father, who go there to buy clothing in many cases or things for their children, or in the case of the LA Dodgers, making that awful decision of inviting this group to one of their nights at the stadium. So we talked a little bit about what drives these companies. What is it about these companies and others who are making these kinds of decisions? And we went into a little bit of detail about that. Again, that's all available in the podcast that you can pick up on my blog anytime today. But the truth is, for some of these companies, these ventures into woke have been pretty costly. And again, you have to wonder who's driving this. Who is telling these companies to do this? It's not their customers, because their customers are reacting to it in a very negative way. And that's you're seeing some of the financial losses of some of these companies really adding up. And again, you can just check that out in the business pages. But certainly, if you're a business out there and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, let's go woke," you may want to reconsider that. Now, it's one thing, and this is something that we got into a little bit of this with Frank in our podcast. You can do target marketing, for example. If you want to target the beer industry, for example, they target certain markets. They'll target, for example, gay men who may go to the bars or whatever. But you can do that. And beer companies and other services do the same thing. But in this case, it went beyond that, especially with children, or in the case of Bud Light, using a transgender as the person doing the promotion. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So check out the interview. I think you're going to like it a great deal. It's a podcast, so it's available on my blog as well as on Twitter if you follow me there. I've got a post over at the American Thinker today about Jane Fonda. Now, some of you remember Jane Fonda. She's been around for a long time. The other day, I caught a movie, or a little bit of a movie, that she made with Robert Redford. My goodness, it's over 50 years ago. It was called Barefoot in the Park, where she and Robert Redford are a young couple, recently married couple, who have an apartment there, I guess in New York, in Park Central or whatever. And that's actually a cute movie. And she does a good job in that movie. She's a good actress. No one can deny that Jane Fonda is a good actress. She comes from a Hollywood family. Her father, her brother were actors as well. But as some of you know, she became a little bit too interested in politics and sort of went out of her way to play the political game. And here recently, she said something. I don't remember where she said it, but she said something sort of blaming white men for climate change, and basically saying that it's all about racism and it's all about the white male structure in our society and so on. And she's gotten herself into a little bit of trouble, to say the least, for making an idiotic statement like that. But also the other thing is, I wrote in my post, her father, Henry Fonda, is a white man. Does she want him arrested? Her former husband, Ted Turner, he was the one who owned the television network TBS. I'm not sure if he still owns it, but he was the original founder of that. He also owned the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if he still does, but he did at one time. So, I guess, does she want those men arrested as well, her father and her former husband? Because in her comments, she said that all the white men should be arrested. And I guess she was talking about the white men who give us climate change. She did not talk, for example, in her comments, or nobody asked her the question, about some of the people in China who are causing a lot of climate change with their, excessive pollution and disregard for the environment. She didn't bring that up. Hopefully some reporter will ask her that question. But I think once again, we see Jane Fonda talking about something she doesn't know anything about, and sadly making a fool out of herself when she makes comments like that. I've got also a post coming out Friday morning about the FBI. You may know that there is a member of Congress, a Republican member of Congress, who claims that there is a memo in the hands of the FBI that would prove allegations of bribery against President Biden. Look, I think that's a pretty serious accusation. It's all coming from a whistleblower, and the director of the FBI does not want to release that memo. I think he has a duty to release that memo. I really do. I think he has to make that clear and make that public. Now, if they want to protect some sources, I understand that. It can be done in a delicate and proper way. But, this situation with the Biden family has now reached the point where I think the American people need to know what's going on. All these Biden family people getting very wealthy. And I think we need to know whether they won the lottery or whether there was some association with their last name that made all of these people so wealthy. I think it's time for that point to be answered, or that question to be answered. Maybe it's just a coincidence. As I said, maybe they won the lottery, and that's why all these Biden people are so wealthy. But if it's something else, I think we need to know. So I think the director of the FBI has to share that memo, at least with the committee, and hopefully the American people, so that we know for once and for all whether there was corruption there in that family and their association with their father, who's now the president of the United States. I think he owes the country, because we've been talking a great deal about Joe Biden. I've stayed away from it, or at least his son Hunter. I've stayed away from it a little bit because I want to see more specific information. I don't want to go down the same road that Democrats went down with the Russia thing, where they were just believing stuff that they were reading in the media. And I want to see something tangible. But I also see a little bit of smoke out there. And when you see all these members of the Biden family making all this money, well, as I said before, did they win the lottery or did they do something else? I think we should know what the heck is going on and why this family has all of a sudden become a pretty wealthy group of people. I think we need to know that. I think the country has to have an explanation to that. Well, we leave you today with an anniversary. On this day in 1967, that would make it 56 years ago today, the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was actually released in England the day before, May 31st or May 30th, and it was released in the United States on June 1st. Of course, it became a one of their top and most favorite albums. And, the Sgt. Pepper's album, the whole concept album, it just sort of changed everything, I guess, in rock music. Because before Sgt. Pepper's, what you had was that groups would have one or two singles and then they would issue an album. In the case of Sgt. Pepper's, it didn't work that way. In the case of Sgt. Pepper's, the entire album was released at the same time without singles from the album making the charts. Now, that didn't mean that they didn't get a lot of airplay. They did, but it was just a different way of presenting the album. And Sgt. Pepper's is today number one on the list of the top 500 or the top 100 albums, according to Rolling Stone magazine. Now, my own review of Sgt. Pepper's. I don't think it's their best album. I really don't. I think that Revolver and Rubber Soul, that time period between Rubber Soul and Revolver, and there's also an American album that was only released in the United States called Yesterday and Today. But that time period between the winter of 65 and the summer of 66, that time period, in my opinion, was the Beatles' most prolific songwriting and recording time. So I put Rubber Soul and Revolver on top of Sgt. Pepper's in my own list of the top English or the top Beatles albums. I would also put some of the other albums like Abbey Road even ahead of Sgt. Pepper's. But Sgt. Pepper's is the one that everybody fell for. And I think it was because it was so different. You know, the cover, and again, the whole idea of a concept album, I think that was something brand new and it caught on quite a bit with the fans. So we remember today Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band released this week in 1967, or 56 years ago today. Man, that's incredible. 56 years that we've been listening to the Beatles, or at least Sgt. Pepper's. That's pretty incredible. You got to give them a little credit for at least having the power to sustain themselves for that length of time. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.